The following World Watch program is from Deutsche Welle, Germany. SBS wishes to advise that it does not endorse the content.
Hello and welcome. This is The Journal on DWTV. I'm Shane Fankhauser in Berlin.
And I'm Monica Jones. Welcome.
Well, out of the headlines, the former Russian spy killed by suspected poisoning had a radioactive substance in his body.
The trial surrounding one of Germany's biggest corporate scandals is heading towards an unexpected end.
And fashion designer Karl Lagerfeld shows off his talents as a photographer. Hello and welcome. British medical experts say that they've found large amounts of radioactive material in the body of Alexander Litvinenko, a former KGB spy who defected to Britain. Litvinenko died on Thursday night after falling ill 3 weeks ago, amid speculation that he'd been poisoned. In a statement written before he died, he directly implicated Russian President Vladimir Putin.
In a statement dictated on his deathbed, the former spy accused the Russian president of direct involvement in his suspected murder. Outside the London hospital where Litvinenko died, a friend read out a section of the statement addressed directly to Vladimir Putin.
You may succeed in silencing one man, but the howl of protest from around the world will reverberate, Mr. Putin, in your ears for the rest of your life.
At the EU-Russia summit in Finland, Vladimir Putin said there was no proof the death was a murder, but he did offer his sympathies.
Смерть человека – это всегда трагедия.
The death of a human being is always a tragedy. I feel sorry for that, and I would like to offer Mr. Litvinenko's family my condolences.
Litvinenko was a vocal critic of the Russian government. Before he died, he'd been investigating the murder of journalist Anna Politkovskaya in Moscow in October. No post-mortem has been performed on Litvinenko's body due to health concerns for those present at the examination. Doctors say they've found large quantities of the radioactive isotope polonium-210 in Litvinenko's body. Police have also found increased radiation levels at the London sushi bar where he ate just before he became ill.
Poland has blocked the launch of a new partnership agreement between the European Union and Russia. Warsaw made the decision because of Russia's ongoing boycott of Polish meat products. Poland's move has cast a shadow over a summit in Helsinki of EU leaders and Russian President Vladimir Putin.
In the Finnish capital, Helsinki, talks remained stalled, despite the smiles for the cameras. Hopes for a quick deal were dashed after Poland said it was sticking to its veto of starting talks on a new partnership between the EU and Moscow. Warsaw believes Russia's ban on imports of Polish meat and vegetables is political and refuses to negotiate.
We cannot agree to Russia treating Poland like a country which doesn't belong to the European Union. If we do not use our veto, then we will be treated like a second-class EU member.
This is the first time a new EU country has used its veto on a major negotiating issue. One element of the new strategic partnership with Russia that was set to be discussed in Helsinki is the renegotiation of energy treaties between Moscow and the EU.
Iraqi police say gunmen killed 30 people in Baghdad in an attack on a Sunni enclave within a mainly Shiite area. A number of Sunni mosques were also attacked, and police said 6 Sunni worshippers were burned alive after leaving Friday prayers. The incidents thought to be reprisals for a series of car bombings in the Shiite Sadr City neighborhood on Thursday, which claimed more than 200 lives. Funerals for many of the victims were held on Friday. An indefinite curfew has been imposed on the capital following what was the deadliest attack since the US-led invasion of 2003. And Manasman is back in the news, but has it ever really left?
Well, exactly. I mean, a rather unexpected settlement actually now marks the end of a 6-year saga that had triggered a heated debate here in Germany about executive pay, and now it looks like one of the biggest corporate trials in post-war German history is about to come to an end. Public prosecutors and the retrial of Deutsche Bank boss Josef Ackermann and 5 other top executives have agreed to drop the case in return for a total payment of 5.8 million euros. Ackermann himself would have to pay 3.2 million of that. The Deutsche Bank CEO has been involved in lengthy legal proceedings involving bonuses paid to senior executives of the Mannesmann company in connection with its takeover by Vodafone 6 years ago.
Josef Ackermann cut an optimistic figure throughout the legal wranglings of the last few years. And now, just 4 weeks into the retrial, he seems poised to emerge relatively unscathed. The deal? If the Deutsche Bank boss makes a payment of 3.2 million euros, public prosecutors will drop the case. The other 5 defendants will face bills totaling 2.6 million.
For the defendants themselves, stopping the legal proceedings, assuming the court agrees to do so, does not imply that any guilt has been established. So the presumption of innocence still holds for the defendants.
Ackermann's lawyers, who had already requested that the case be dropped, appealed for a quick resolution.
Nobody knows how the proceedings would draw to a close, so we just want things to end as quickly and acceptably as possible.
If the court agrees to the deal, Ackermann's position at Deutsche Bank seems secure. Earlier this year, he said a guilty verdict would lead to his departure.
Financial services giant Allianz is compromising on cost-cutting measures announced back in June. Germany's biggest union, Verdi, says Allianz has agreed to extend a job guarantee for some employees at its German insurance unit by 2 years to the end of 2009. Earlier this year, Europe's biggest insurer announced plans to shed some 5,000 jobs at its German insurance companies and about 2,500 jobs at its Dresdner Bank operations. Allianz is expecting to make a profit of over 6 billion euros this year, and that prompted employees to stage strikes and demonstrations against the layoffs. A fairly quiet week on the markets due to the Thanksgiving holiday in the US turned into a rout on Friday with investors selling off shares. So what happened? Well, it was the euro that did it by hitting 19-month highs. The euro has risen steadily since the start of the year. It continued its climb against the dollar and ended the week nudging $1.31, levels not seen since April 2005. Friday's rally was due to investors buying into the currency on speculation that the European Central Bank is worried enough now about inflation to push through a series of interest rate hikes in 2007. And that all had negative effects on the markets, both on Wall Street and here in Europe. Our reporter Ellen Frauenknecht kept an eye on trading activity at the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. She gave us this wrap-up of the impact of the euro's strength on investor sentiment.
What looked set to be a quiet day in Frankfurt turned into a session that erased all DAX gains made since Monday. The scapegoat, the euro, for the first time since April 2005. The currency rose above $1.30. And this, of course, could prove to be a burden for all those companies that primarily depend on exports to the US, the Eurozone's biggest trading partner. And this, of course, is a car sector. BMW, Volkswagen, Daimler Chrysler shares all lost 2 to 3% on this renewed strength in the euro. Elsewhere, Deutsche Bank shares barely reacted to news that the Mannesmann trial is likely to come to an end. As disputable as Josef Ackermann's public image is, as happy most shareholders are with his performance as CEO of Deutsche Bank. Hence, if anything, there is a bit of relief that he is likely to keep his job for now.
Ellen Frauenknecht in Frankfurt. And now let's take a quick look at the numbers in more detail. In Frankfurt, the blue chip DAX index closed almost 1% lower, ending the trading week at 64.12. The Euro Stoxx 50 index also shed almost a full percent on Friday to close at 40.48. And on Wall Street, the Dow also closed lower, ending the week at 12,280. German industrial giant Siemens has agreed to provide an aid package totaling 71 million euros for former employees of the insolvent German mobile phone unit sold by Siemens to Taiwan's BenQ in 2005. Around 3,000 people lost their jobs last month when BenQ shut down its operations in Germany. The 71 million euros in aid is more than Siemens had previously announced it was willing to contribute, but less than unions had been hoping for. Most of the money will go in retraining and finding new jobs for the former employees. More problems at Airbus' parent concern EADS. Following delivery delays to its much-vaunted A380 Super Jumbo, it now emerges that its A350 long-haul aircraft could also be in serious trouble. An EADS board meeting originally planned for Friday to resolve the issue has now been postponed until late next week. Major shareholders and the French government are involved in a bitter dispute about financing for the 10 billion euro A350. Meanwhile, Airbus remains in danger of losing its ability to keep pace with its arch-rival Boeing in America. The Airbus A350 was designed to compete with Boeing's new Dreamliner. And now more international news with Shane.
Thanks, Monica. Well, a plainclothes policeman shot and killed one soccer fan and wounded another during a fight after a UEFA Cup match in Paris on Thursday night. The officer was trying to help a fan of the visiting team Hapoel Tel Aviv, who'd been attacked by supporters of the home team, Paris Saint-Germain. The crowd then turned on the policeman, and that's when he drew his gun. The Paris prosecutor's office has opened a formal investigation into the incident. Several villages in northern and central Portugal have been flooded after heavy rainfall. The town of Lourinhã, north of Lisbon, was completely inundated when the Rio Grande broke its banks. A number of roads were closed to traffic because of the floods, and train services were disrupted. Forecasters say they expect conditions to improve over the weekend. Here in Germany, Parliament has passed next year's budget, which includes the lowest level of new debt since reunification more than 15 years ago. The plan calls for more than 270 billion euros of public spending, including 19.6 billion in new borrowing. The country's finance minister says he wants to reduce the budget deficit even more than originally planned in the coming years, and that's thanks, in part, to better than expected economic growth.
Chancellor Angela Merkel was among the first to cast her vote. 405 MPs backed the budget, while 152 voted against. Finance Minister Per Steinbrück told Parliament that the government was a step closer to reducing its massive overall debt of 1.5 trillion euros.
I'm quite sure that after this year we will be able to show, even if the results aren't perfect, that this government is indeed capable of meeting the challenges it faces.
Steinbrück didn't set a target date for presenting a balanced budget, but the 2007 plan does at least bring Germany's new borrowing back below the 3% limit allowed under the Eurozone Stability Pact, which Berlin had broken for the past 5 years.
A small plane clipped a bridge and crashed onto the roof of a car on a busy highway in western Germany on Friday. Emergency services said 7 people were injured in the accident, which occurred during afternoon rush hour. A twin propeller plane was on its way from Berlin to the western city of Essen. Police say the plane's 2 passengers were seriously hurt, but other injuries were minor. They're still investigating the cause of the crash. Well, let's have some football news now. And Friday evening saw one Bundesliga game being played. League leaders Schalke beat Bochum 2-1. That result means Schalke will stay at the top of the table after this weekend's play, while Bochum continue to languish in the relegation zone. Well, among the highlights in Saturday's play, Werder Bremen take on Arminia Bielefeld. Well, normally Bremen would be red-hot favourites, but Bielefeld are riding high at the moment, just 6 points off the top, and they haven't lost in 8 games.
Bielefeld are more used to fighting against relegation than fighting for a spot in European competition. But after 13 games, Bielefeld are 6th in the table, and people are starting to take notice.
We've been in the Bundesliga for 3 years now. I think people should at least know by now that we exist.
Thomas von Heesen has been instrumental in Bielefeld's success. Von Heesen is an analytical coach, and his hard work is paying off. He knows how to motivate his players. And he's built up a strong unit at Bielefeld where everyone works for the benefit of the team. Artur Fichtner-Jarek, for example, is in top form. He was let go by Hertha Berlin after failing to score enough goals. This season, he's already netted 5 for Bielefeld. Many Bielefeld fans are dreaming of a place in the UEFA Cup. But there's a long way to go until the end of the season, and on Saturday, Bremen will be no pushovers.
Well, Karl Lagerfeld is one of the world's most famous fashion designers, but not as well known is that he's also an accomplished photographer. And he spent the past 20 years taking pictures. Now, an art gallery in Berlin is showing an exclusive exhibition of his photographic work. The designer came to the German capital Friday for the opening of a one-man show.
Wherever he goes, fashion designer Karl Lagerfeld knows how to attract attention, and he enjoys being in the public eye. But he also enjoys working behind the camera as a photographer. He says that's as important to him as his fashion creations.
All of it together, the luxury in my life is that I don't need to choose.
The Berlin exhibition One Man Shown features more than 500 of Lagerfeld's photos. It also tracks the career of one model, Brad Kronig, an American discovered by Lagerfeld. For 3.5 years, the designer documented the life of the rising star. His photos show the changes in his face. Today, Lagerfeld's discovery is one of the best-paid male models in the world.
Now, when I see all the photos, it's like it's someone else. It's like I'm going to someone else's exhibition. It's not even me, but it's been a great experience. We've been all over the world.
Lagerfeld curated the show exclusively for the Berlin exhibition. The photos are on display until February 4th next year.
Well, for much of the year, the relationship between Germany's press and its politicians can resemble that of hunter and hunted. But once a year, they gather for a more social occasion, the glamorous Federal Press Ball. The guests on Friday night were limited to editors-in-chief, top politicians and business leaders. No celebrities were invited to stroll down the red carpet at the Intercontinental Hotel in Berlin. The theme of the evening was Magic Worlds, and at least some of the more than 2,000 guests were enchanted by the fairy tale atmosphere in the ballroom. Hello, winter is the ball season in Europe, and one of the most prestigious is the German government's own annual press ball in Berlin. This year's event was opened by President Horst Köhler on Friday evening. The ball's website boasts that it's Germany's social event #1, the country's biggest gathering of celebrities from politics, business and the media. But it's by invitation only. So if you're there, it shows how important or famous the organisers think you are. Well, of course, some people might say functions like this are just an excuse for the great and the good to show off. But Germany isn't alone in its love of this sort of glamorous public ritual.
The Vienna Opera Ball is the highlight of Austria's social season. It's where politicians mingle with the glamorous and the famous. And this is the sight to make any mother's eyes swell with tears of pride. This year's debutantes officially opening the ball. Every year, the cream of Vienna's youth is introduced into high society clad in tiaras and tails. Up to 7,000 guests waltz the night away. Boxes cost as much as 16,000 euros, drinks not included. Tickets are usually sold out a year in advance.
1, 2, 3.
The Life Ball also takes place in Vienna, but it's an entirely different affair. It's held in support of AIDS projects and is attended by tens of thousands of people. Stars like Liza Minnelli and Elton John perform. Outrageous and provocative, the wilder the dress, the less the guests have to pay to get in. An altogether more noble affair is the Red Cross Ball in Monaco. It's positively littered with VIP guests like fashion designer Karl Lagerfeld, who's an old friend of the Grimaldis. The singer Shirley Bassey, and a former James Bond. It's all in the best possible taste, and the €1,000 ticket money goes to a good cause. Who's the beauty sitting next to Albert, and is there something going on between them? Of course, the Grimaldis themselves are the real draw. You won't catch anyone dancing here, by the way. That would be far too common.
Well, if you turn up at a ball wearing jeans and a T-shirt, the odds are that you will not get in. And if you do manage to talk your way past the security staff, you still won't find yourself strutting to hip-hop or swaying to a samba, let alone pogo dancing. You'll also be in trouble if your manners aren't up to snuff. Bad form can end in rejection and even ejection. So, if you aren't actually upper crust, you'll need to acquire at least a thin veneer of breeding to survive in such rarefied company. But don't worry, there are schools of etiquette which can teach you how to behave like a lord. Good manners can indeed be purchased.
It's your decision. You can say, "Good evening, Mr. Goetze," or you can extend your hand. Show us what you do.
Guten Abend, Herr Götz. Guten Abend. Sehr schön.
Students of etiquette first learn how to say hello properly, and then whom they should address first of all. Women and the elderly should be greeted before men and youngsters. But what if you are confronted with an aristocrat, or a whole bunch of aristocrats of different rank?
Civil counts as mothball.
That's wrong. The correct form of address in German is simply Countess Mothball, without the first name. There are many more rules to learn before these students can be let loose in the world of polite society.
Now I'll explain the difference between a ball and a party, and how important the choice of clothing is. How important it is to find out what kind of ball it is. For example, at large official balls, you have the chance to wear a long and sumptuous dress.
For men, that means wearing a dark suit, or even tails, or a tuxedo and bow tie. Table manners present the biggest challenge. They are taught rules that might even prove useful in everyday life as well. Don't fiddle with the place setting. Don't put used cutlery anywhere, but on the plate.
You have to be careful when you go out for a meal or attend an event connected with work. Being polite is important.
You feel more in control when you know what to do. You don't have to check and see what your neighbours are doing or how they're doing it. If you've been taught, you just know, and you feel confident. That's a good feeling.
Greeting and dining have been mastered. But then there's the art of conversation. The first rule here is avoid controversy. Politics and religion are taboo.
Well, now, if all the small talk gets you down, you can always dance, assuming you know how to, that is. But even if you don't, all is not lost. Just like social graces, terpsichorean skills can be learned. A whole generation of aging rockers once looked down on traditional forms as being too conventional. Not to mention Square Dad. Well, now they're going back to school to sharpen up their fancy footwork.
Daniel Klicks and Andreas Bogen. Two men who've spent a big part of their teenage years in discos. As youngsters, they wouldn't have been caught dead learning the foxtrot or a waltz at a dance school.
20 years ago, you had to be cool. Formal dancing was totally uncool. At least that's what I thought back then.
Und so habe ich es dann damals auch empfunden. War ja immer noch so ein bisschen mit Verneigen.
It was all curtsies and bows, and you had to wear special clothes. In those days, nobody wanted to do that. It just wasn't hip.
But then they got older and wiser. With adolescence behind them, these former hipsters, now in their mid-30s, have enrolled in their first dance course. They're here to learn classics like the mambo, foxtrot, and various waltzes. concentration is written all over Daniel Klicks's face. He decided to take the class when he realized how important dance is at social gatherings.
I was at a Christmas party. There was a waltz and I had to dance with someone. I couldn't. I had 2 left feet. After that experience, I promised never to walk out on a dance floor again, even at weddings.
Klicks hopes he'll never be in the same situation ever again, and he's not the only one. The staff at this dance school have been aware of a trend for some time now. A growing number of 30-year-olds are taking dance classes so they can safely take to the floor at weddings and other social occasions. It's not something they feel they have to do. They're doing it for fun, and because it boosts their self-confidence.
It makes me feel more sure of myself. You never know when you'll have to dance. It's a good feeling to know you can.
I've come round to thinking it's cool.
And with a little more practice, they'll soon be gliding across the dance floor in style. And they'll make up for what they missed when growing up.
Well, we've had a ball bringing this to you. Hope you've enjoyed it. It's been our In-Depth. Thanks for watching.
The weather for Germany first, and November conditions remain mild across the country for this time of year, with winter still feeling like a long-off prospect. It'll stay relatively moderate over the next few days, and the sun will even get a look in at the weekend. Turning to the rest of Europe now, and it'll stay wet but warm in Spain. Italy can look forward to temperatures around 20 degrees Celsius. It'll be chilliest in Moscow, where the mercury won't exceed 6 degrees. And now the forecast for selected cities around the world.